Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Dad to Dads podcast. So, in my conversations with men, when we talk about, what they're feeling, what they might be missing, what they're even internally, what they might be dealing with, there's a few things, usually about three things that I generally hear coming up. One is loneliness, and it's kind of a sense of not feeling connected, whether it's at home, whether it's with other men. Two is usually a sense of belonging, belonging to something maybe bigger than how they view the current world or their surroundings. And a lot of times the last one is a sense of purpose. Why am I here? Am I living the life I should be living? Am I living a fulfilling life? So back in 2016, today's guest gathered a small group of guys to help address and help tackle some of those issues, and has basically grown it into a global network of men. Lucas Krump, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Robert, thanks for being here.
Man, I
It's
really
just
appreciate
wild.
you coming on.
Yeah, no, I was just, when you were saying 2016, it just seems like yesterday and also like a lifetime ago.
I bet. I bet. Well, I mean, did Everyman really start off like just a small group of guys? You guys getting together?
Yeah, it was a coincidental thing for me. In 2016, I was living in New York City, had sort of been through the journey of working for an early stage tech company. That company was acquired, and things happened in my life that left me at an intersection where I was like, wow, what's missing? And so in 2016, I started sort of looking at my own life, self-inquiry. And that self-inquiry led me to my other two co-founders of Everyman, Dan Doty and Sasha Lewis, who had sat together in a men's group in New York City for a number of years. And I coincidentally met Dan. He invited me to this retreat that they were going to do in upstate New York. And so I was actually a participant
Huh.
at that first, what we called open source. That was actually before the name Everyman existed. And yeah, it was about 20 guys. We got together in a barn in Sheffield, Massachusetts. We're actually going back to that same barn next week with a
So
group
it's a
of guys.
barn, not a
It's
bar, a barn.
it's a barn. It's a barn, not a
Wow.
bar. And that first retreat was, I would call it an experiment.
Yeah.
And I was there as a participant, but I was also there as someone who had started his own journey of self-inquiry many years before that. And I was absolutely blown away by the depth of emotionality and sort of rawness that I saw in other participants that
Hmm.
were kind of new, I guess, new to this kind of inquiry and self-exploration. And it blew me wide open. And at the end of that retreat, I said to Dan and Sasha, like, hey, um, we got to do more of this. How do we do that? And so shortly after that, we got together in a conference room in New York City and sketched out a big vision for every man. And here we are today. I mean, the path has certainly not been linear, but
Never
I
is.
think I think where we are today speaks volumes for the need, um, and what I would call the demand for
Yeah.
the things that you spoke about. Connection, purpose, knowing. Those are all things that men want and need in their lives, and that I think that are looking for. And so we've been able to fill that void in our own way, and then certainly there's been other organizations that have done it in their way. But I'm really proud of kind of everything that we've gone through to be in this moment and the number of men that we have impacted through this work.
So what is it that you guys do? I mean, I know that's very broad because you guys do a lot, right? It's kind of like going to huge restaurant. What do you serve? You serve food. What do you serve? I mean, or what are the ingredients? That's a lot. But kind of what is the if you had to tell me, if we were in an elevator, hey, what does every man do? What's the purpose?
Yeah, I mean, every man enables men or empowers men to live healthier, happier, more connected lives. And we do that through shared experience, wisdom, knowledge, and connection, right?
Yeah.
And I think that, although that may sound broad, um, it is at the heart of what we do. We I hear from lots of men that are walking around with a knowing
Hmm.
that something is not aligned internally,
Yeah.
knowing that maybe they're not living the life that they want to be living, knowing that they're maybe stuck in a loop that just keeps coming back around and around and around again. And so, when a man gets to that point where he's just tired of that shit, quite frankly,
Yeah.
he has to make a decision to change. And that decision to change often leads men to Everyman. Like I always say, like Everyman can't do anything for you if you're not ready to do
Willing to do
something
it.
for yourself,
Yeah.
right? And quite frankly, doing something for yourself is a selfish act, especially if you're in a family and you've got to be a provider, or you've never sort of put yourself first, right?
Yeah.
But that selfish act is it, it it's so critical to sort of grasping our own agency and saying, hey, I can't be great for anyone else, for my partner, for my children, for my colleagues, if I'm not great for who I am.
Yeah. That, when you're saying that, I'm thinking you can't love somebody else if you can't love somebody else if you don't love yourself first.
Correct. Correct. And oftentimes we grasp for love to replace the love that we don't have for ourselves.
Yep.
And then that will lead to contortion or performative behavior that only gets us further and further from who we actually are at our core.
Yeah.
And so I see that kind of playing out time and time again. But I would say, just to come back around to your point, one of the core things that we do is we we have what we call our everyman method, which is very much grounded in somatic awareness, right? And so as men, we spend a lot of time in our heads. We don't spend a lot of time in our heart or in our body, right?
Right.
And our body and our emotions are critical to supporting our nervous system, right? And so we create space and we provide men the tools and the training and the training ground to actually practice getting out of our head and getting into our bodies and feeling what we need to feel, and then developing our level of vulnerability so we can connect with ourselves and others in a way that actually provides us that nutrient of connection. You touched on loneliness. It's not like we live in a world where we're more connected than we've ever been. So why are we lonely? Well, we're lonely because we're not able to receive the nutrient of connection, which
Yeah.
comes through vulnerability, which is hard for guys because, quite honestly, who the hell taught you how to do that? Nobody taught me how to do it.
No. No, you are right. I was with some people the other day, some old friends, and I mean we're on a text chain and catching up all the time and giving each other a hard time, talking about sports. It's just everything. And then we were able to get together in person and spend a few hours together. And really, that conversation evolved into talking about what we're dealing with, the stresses of this, the stresses of that, the fears.
Yeah.
And at the end, one of my friends like, I'm really so happy that we got to do this. Like, I've missed this and I've needed this. And I was thinking about this when we were leaving. It was like, yeah, like we communicate and it's so easy. The text will pop up whatever time, we'll communicate that way, but it's not really the deep, hey, I'm scared about this. I'm
Right.
in my 50s and I'm doing well and the economy's not great. I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job. I don't know how I'm going to approach my wife and kids about it. You can't do that over, and all their internal struggles. You can't do that over text. And
Well, and one thing I would say is that often, as men, we kind of do this thing where we put shit off until we actually, until the pain and suffering sort of outweighs
Guilty.
everything else, right? And so, unfortunately, that's just our tendency.
Yeah.
But in reality, you know, if I really believe that we are in a moment, a shift in our sort of cultural psyche where guys doing the work in advance of the explosion
Hmm.
it is what I would call the new sort of masculinity. It's
Yeah.
like, hey man, like I know if I don't get my shit together and figure out who I am, that inevitably when life gets hard, it's going to seep out and
Yeah.
blow up in ways that I don't really want. And so
Yeah.
it's really interesting that I see more and more guys that are saying, "Hey, I'm going to actually I'm going to start to do the work now so that when that conversation needs to happen, I actually have the tools to
Yeah.
navigate this." Because you can imagine that if your buddy hadn't done it, hadn't learned how to do this, that's going to be a really rough conversation.
Oh yeah. 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 No, it's that's so true. That's so true. So I want to dive in a little bit deeper with the issues that you see men dealing with. Do you mind kind of going in a little bit further? Maybe kind of the common things when men come to you guys, what they might be experiencing, dealing with.
Yeah, well, I mean, I definitely think connection is at the core of it, right? So relationships often suffer as a function of an imbalance in emotionality. Obviously, women are very well versed in emotionality and vulnerability, and
It's a great way to
oftentimes,
put it.
yeah, and oftentimes the men are not able to meet them where they're at, and
Yeah.
and that doesn't have to be an apples to apples,
Right.
but we need to be able to, you often hear women, I want to feel you, right? Well, if I say, "Hey Robert, how are you doing today?" and you say good, well, spoiler, good is not an emotion, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't tell me anything about you. So, I think helping guys understand their emotionality and then being able to communicate and articulate that in a way that allows for our partners to connect with us and also for us to be able to create what I call emotional safety, right? Is really really core. I think another um, pattern that I see is just guys really stuck in the loop, right? Just
Yeah.
kind of like going through the motions, doing the same shit every day and getting the same outcome, whether it be in relationships, whether it be in just their overall sense of purpose and meaning in life, right? Whether it be in um, their relationship with their children, not being able to really feel a deeper level of connection, right?
Yeah.
Like guys get stuck in this loop, and I know because I've been stuck in a loop,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's like at some point you just got to get out of the drying machine and be like, I got to do something about this.
No, no, I think that's great. And unfortunately, you see a lot of men that do get stuck in that loop and decide just to kind of stay there. There's nothing more. And then I think that leads to that, at times, whether it's failed relationships or just overall depression and, you
Yeah,
know,
well, numbing out, and
yeah,
quite frankly, there's been we live in a culture that for for a long time has kind of uh, given license to that.
yeah,
It's like that's what we're supposed to do. Suck it up, keep chugging along, and just think that you're going to persevere and things will be better on the other side. Well, that doesn't work, right?
yeah. No, you're saying that. And I'm thinking, yeah, keep doing your 8 to 6, your 9 to 5, dropping, few dollars into your 401k, and this is life. This is what it's supposed to be about. And go home, deal with what's at home, go back, start it up the next day. And, this is what life's about. And that's a
Right.
depressing cycle.
Well, and the what's depressing about that is that there's nothing wrong with that cycle, right?
Hmm.
Our our being craves some level of predictability and rhythm, right? That's what actually
Sure.
soothes and calms our nervous systems and allows us to make sort of decisions from rational places. But if you're not connected to yourself and you don't have that ability to express your emotionality, then it's almost like you're going to be watching that movie or participating in that movie in black and white and
Yeah.
not color. It's going to
Yeah.
be a lot better if it's in color, right, man? 8 to 6, great. You got a steady job, you're doing well, and you can come home and you can love your wife and you guys can laugh and you can, cry and you can care for one another and you can have adventures. Like, what the hell's wrong with that? That's a good life. But like,
Yeah.
if we, you know what I mean? Like, we get stuck in this trap where we're like, yeah, I'm just doing the same thing every day. Well, it's like, that's okay. Or like,
Yeah.
are you enjoying it? Like, are you
Yeah.
enjoying
If
the
you're enjoying
beauty
it,
of
that's
that?
great. But it can be such a depressive cycle to
Right.
get in. So I want to ask you, I want to jump into the retreats that you guys have. It's probably safe to assume it's not, a bunch of men sitting around a bonfire drinking bourbon and talking about, what kind of crap are you going through? What are you dealing with? I mean, do you mind kind of going through that? Because honestly, that's where I found you guys when I was looking
Yeah.
at different things, and I'm like, this is really cool. Like, this is
Yeah.
so neat. Go into
Yeah.
that for those that don't know.
For sure. Well, it is kind of like that, minus the bourbon. We sort of, we keep that till after the retreat. Um, but no, the retreat is designed to. We oftentimes what happens is, in the psychology of behavior change, there's sort of two parts, right? There's peak experiences, and then there's actual behavior change, right? And we crave, as humans, we crave peak experiences. And what I mean by that is like, I'm going to go to this retreat or I'm going to go do this thing and I'm going to get out of my everyday environment and I'm going to be able to look at myself and look at my life in a different way, right? That is not obstructed by what's going on every day. And so a retreat, gives you 48 hours to do that in a very, very intentional way. And that is so critical to be able to get out of our everyday lives, come together with a group of guys that you've never met before. And we're going to guide you on a roller coaster of emotionality in a way that you are safe and, supported. And what that is going to allow you to do is actually come into the knowing of your own self, of the full expression and capability that you have as a human, to sort of wake you up and say, hey, Robert, like, look at what you are capable of. You
Yeah.
are capable of laughing your ass off. You are capable of being on your knees in tears. You are capable of expressing love and empathy for another man that you've never met before. You are capable of actually putting a stake in the ground and saying, this is who I am and this is what I want. And we're going to give you the ability to do that. But the change doesn't occur until you take that and you start to put it into practice, because behavior change is,
Right.
the equation is simple: repetition over time, right?
Yeah.
And so, that being said, some guys come to 2 or 3 retreats every year, and that's their,
Really.
that's their tune up, that's
Yeah.
their mechanism that they use to stay in touch with that part of themselves. But retreats are, I mean, they're fun as hell.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, you're going to feel like you just ran, an Ironman, because you're going to start to use muscle, emotional muscle that you probably have never exercised before in your life. And you're going to feel the fatigue of that emotional labor
Yeah.
in the most beautiful way. Just like went skiing for the day, or you went on ran a marathon or something else. It's a good tired.
Yeah. Yeah.
You earned it.
Yeah. For me, it's kind of like leg day when working
Yeah,
out. It's like, I don't want to do it. Oh, this is painful. I hate doing this. And then at the end, you're like, oh, I'm so happy I did that. I feel so good about it.
exactly.
Oh, and
It's
I don't want to
exactly
do
the
it
same
again in
thing.
4 days, but
No, but and who would? That's the
yeah,
thing. That's what we do as guys. It's like, if I was like, "Hey, Robert, you want to go on a weekend with some guys and rip your heart open and cry and speak your deepest truth?" You'd be like, "Fuck no." But in the back of your mind, it's probably what you need to do.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You,
yeah.
you know,
That's what's
and
best for you.
and that's just the difference.
Yeah,
That's the difference between the guy that's stuck in the loop or
yep,
the guy that says, "Oh yeah, man, this is going to really suck, and maybe I'm a little bit timid about this, but I actually do need to do this."
yeah,
It,
yeah.
you know,
Because then it improves your life in probably every facet coming out of that, right? I mean,
I mean, we've done so many of these retreats. I don't. It couldn't. Anecdotally, sorry. Anecdotally, nobody's come up to me and said, "Oh, that was a total waste of my time."
yeah,
You know.
yeah. Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. So are these? It's not really one on one. I mean, it's group therapy? Is that more of what it is? Kind of.
I definitely wouldn't call what we do therapy.
Okay.
Therapists are therapists for a reason.
Right.
Um, what we do is therapeutic
Hmm.
unequivocally. And
So more like facilitators, sort of,
yeah,
kind of.
I personally believe that as humans, we, if you were to say, and this is kind of uh, a side note, but if you look at the current messaging, right, in our culture, it's like, oh, men's mental health crisis, right?
Hmm.
Well, mental health has a varying degree of severity, right?
Sure.
5 being severe mental health, in which somebody has a diagnosable mental health disorder, which is common and known, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then 1 being life, right?
Yeah.
The struggle, the ups and downs, the stress that comes from just living our lives. I personally believe that we as humans, as men, we have the capacity between sort of 1 to 3, and maybe even 4, to actually care for ourselves and others, right? Until
Yeah.
we need to bring in the professionals. And so, what is core of the work that we do is relationship, right? I would call it relational fitness, in that if you look at your life is the aggregate of all the relationships that you have. Relationship with yourself,
Hmm.
relationship with
Hmm.
your spouse, relationship with your children, with your families, with your coworkers, right? All of those relationships define who we are. Well, who taught you how to be in relation with another person? Because I mean, this is this is if you look at evolutionary biology, we are hardwired for connection. We need connection
Oh,
to
absolutely.
survive,
Yeah.
right? And so if we need connection to survive, then we need those relationships. And if we need those relationships, well, then how do we actually navigate and get the most out of those relationships in a way that actually nourishes us and supports us and allows us to be sovereign in who we are, and the other person to be sovereign in who they are, but us for to actually meet in the middle and build this relationship? Well, that's something that you have to practice doing. It
And so
just
you
doesn't happen.
guys, I guess, with this retreat, you guys help identify that, and then basically give them the tools so when they leave, they have that toolbox to use going forward. Is that correct?
Unequivocally,
Okay.
unequivocally. And one thing I would say is that there's a there's a very basic formula that it's a here's the freebie, but the formula is this: Robert, when you said X, I felt Y. And what that is doing is saying, Robert, I heard you. And when you express that, I felt this emotion. And what that's doing is it's unconsciously telling you that I see you, and your expression, whatever it may be, I'm tuned into myself enough to be able to be impacted by what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Be empathetic.
And you can take that into your relationship right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't require justification or any further discussion. Hey, when you said you were angry at me, I felt sad. Like, that's my own experience. That's my emotional experience. You can't change that for me. And I get to express that to you in an honest, vulnerable way. Now, you get to choose with what you do with it.
What you do with that. Yeah.
But just simply by doing that, I'm practicing vulnerability, and I'm practice being in relation with you.
I would imagine at times it is well, I don't know. Cause I think I imagine for some men, you guys probably see that it's hard to crack that initial shell, but then on the flip side,
it's not.
Yeah. Well, cause then I was thinking on the flip side, if you're making that first step, you're willing to have that shell cracked. You're willing to open that door and show those raw emotions. So I guess not then. And
look, I'm always quick to, as guys, we're competitive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing to me to see that competitiveness us come out in our emotionality, right?
Yeah.
Like, wow, I need to be more vulnerable than Robert. Like, I need to have a bigger cry than Robert.
I need to cry more than him.
Yeah. It's like, what the hell? And it's like, your experience does not need to look like Robert's experience. So, maybe you just saying, hey, I was on a call. I was guiding a group a couple weeks ago, and there was a 76-year-old man that was on the call. And he said, and I said, Mike, how do you feel in relation to Nick right now?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, oh, I feel camaraderie. Right?
Yeah.
And I had to correct him and say, Mike, camaraderie is guy speak for love.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what if you just told Nick that you loved him? And that was such an enormous
I'm sure
stretch.
Yeah.
But what it led to was, wow, I actually don't know how to tell my own sons that I love them. And we're talking one word. We're not talking some, cataclysmic emotional release. And that's okay.
I imagine at the end of these, the friendships, the bonds that are made are just unbelievable between the participants.
Yes. And the reason why that is, because if you study teams,
mm-hmm.
right? And I think I didn't serve in the military, but we do have a number of veterans from special forces and various other groups that have participated in and are participants. Actually, Judd Kaufman, our CEO, is a former Navy SEAL. Teams don't become teams until there's some level of shared sacrifice, right? And that sacrifice can come when you're risking your life for another man. That shared sacrifice can come on a playing field when you're working your ass off and you guys are trying to win a game. That shared sacrifice can come when, hey, it's like we all took down our guard this weekend and we all sort of showed a little bit more of ourselves than we're used to showing.
Yeah.
And if you're human, you're going to recognize that sacrifice, right? And you're going to feel like you're a team. There's a lot of guys that say, wow, like, known you for 48 hours and like, you're my best friend in the entire world. Well,
know me better than anybody else now.
Of course, because Bobby, who you grew up with from the third grade, you've never told anything about who you are, and you've been holding on to the relationship with Bobby because you haven't had the tools to actually go and create new relationships based on who you are now in your life. I see that so often.
I
Guys hold
bet.
on to these friendships, and there's nothing wrong with that, but like, here's the reality. You are the average of the top 5 people that you spend the most amount of time with.
Sure. Sure.
And so I always tell guys, it's like, Evryman is a growth group. Like, if you want to grow, if you want to change, if you want to become a better version of yourself, the fastest way to do that is start hanging out with guys that want to do that same thing.
Yeah. You're saying that. I had a conversation with my sons not too long ago talking about that same thing.
Mm.
You look at your friends, and it was the same conversation. I mean, it was the same one, and about picking your friends wisely, and they've done a great job. So let me
Yeah.
say that they've done a great job, and I was actually expressing to them how proud I was of them,
Mm-hmm.
and saying that very thing. Like, you are the average. You are right there at the average of the 5 people that you hang around the most. And I want you to keep that in mind. So if you've got, if you let 1 or 2 that are maybe going down the wrong path, all right, that's going to skew your average in that direction. And you need to always keep that in mind. You want to perform better? Okay. Maybe look for, a couple more higher achievers, that type. And that's, yeah.
And what's in, and it's great that you're having that conversation, but and what's interesting about that, and this goes back to group dynamics, and we have Abigail Rue, who's a PhD in sort of group dynamics and works with us. And what's so interesting about that is, in that dynamic, the group won't ever let you fall behind, but the group will also not ever let you rise above.
Very true. Very
So
true.
the group creates this space in which you can operate in, which is fine. But if you want to go beyond that, you have to break free.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. And I'm smiling because that was part of it too. And I told them, I said, look, your friends now, you view them as those are going to be your friends forever. They might not be, because you might reach a place, in your life or in your professional pursuit where you might notice 1 or 2 or 3, or maybe all of them are kind of anchors.
Yeah.
They're holding you back, and don't be afraid to let them go.
It's so interesting that you say that. I was recently, last year I was back. I'm from Kansas City originally, and I haven't been back in, I don't know, 15 years.
Yeah.
But I drove by my high school. I went to an all boys Jesuit school, and I have nephews, and I was looking at them and their dynamics, and it's such an interesting thing for young men, because high school it creates this sort of petri dish, right? This space that they get to operate in, and that becomes their community and their social network because of function of the environment that they're in every day.
Right.
And I was thinking about, man, as soon as I left high school and left college, then I got to go out into the world and just be whoever there was no, is he cool or is he not? You know what I mean? Like, young men in the context of, high school create this sort of hierarchy that doesn't exist in the real world. It's like, I don't know if you're cool or not cool. I don't know. You just didn't seem like a nice guy. Like, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's just so interesting that they don't see that when they're in it.
Yeah, that's true. Hey, so, and I want to be cognizant every time. You have multiple retreats a year throughout the country. They're not retreats where you guys are getting together at a hotel and in the little conference room, down in the hotel. These are, tell more. They're cool places.
No. We're definitely not in the church basement. No, we do the retreats all over the country.
Yeah.
Our next one is next month in upstate New York, Racebrook Lodge. We do them down in Texas, outside of Austin, at a different ranch. We also do what we call expeditions that are kind of adventure based. We have one coming up this summer, which is a sea kayaking retreat. Up in Washington State, and so they are, nature is very powerful medicine,
Yeah.
um, and combined with this work, it just the alchemy of that experience is really powerful.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is that the online platform, and I've just been
Good.
wildly blown away. We always knew that we wanted to develop the online platform, even when we started with the retreats. COVID gave us the opportunity to kind of pause the retreats and build out the online platform, and we've been iterating and building upon that ever since then. And today, I mean, we have an introductory program which is called Evryman Fundamentals, which is a 4-week online program. It's 90 minutes every Tuesday night, so it's 360 minutes. I always like to say it's 1% of the available minutes that guys have. Guys are like, I don't have time. I'm like, dude, you don't have 1%? I don't know, man. You got to have 1%. You got to have 1% of your time. But it's 1% of your time. And in 4 weeks, you will develop many of the same sort of inquiries, and obviously in a different format.
Right.
And then from there we have the training ground, or the membership community as we call it, where we facilitate men's groups every single day across a
Really?
variety of different topics, everything from work and money, fathers and uncles, purpose and leadership, spirituality. There's divorce and separation. There's a whole variety of groups that are facilitated by guys that have been through our training and certification program, that many of them are coaches or therapists or counselors in their day-to-day lives, working one-on-one, and then they lead and facilitate groups for us throughout the week. And the power of those groups is that we call them drop-in groups.
Hmm.
So a traditional kind of men's group, there's an expectation that Robert's going to be there every Monday night from 7 to 9 o'clock. Well, you know what? Robert's busy as hell. He's traveling
Yeah.
for work. He's doing all kinds of stuff. Like, Robert knows what's best for him.
Hmm.
And so we're not creating an expectation that you have to be there every Monday night, so you can show up, you can join the group. Many guys, they do come to the same groups
Right.
because it just becomes part of their schedule. And then they sort of self-select to make this a priority in their lives, versus that sort of heavy-handed, hey, you got to be, if you want to be in this group, you got to be here for 3 hours every Monday night. I mean, that's a big lift for
Yeah.
guys like us.
So you don't have to go to the retreat before you start doing the virtual. That's
Absolutely
great.
not. Absolutely not. Fundamentals is a program that we run every single month. It starts the first Tuesday of every month.
Gosh, that's great. And the in-person retreats are more of almost like a emotional boot camp.
Yeah.
Really dig in hard, get everything, get
Well,
everything really intense, but also
yeah,
in
but
touch with nature.
for sure. But the awesome thing about the combination is, like, we've got a retreat next week, and there
Hmm.
are guys that went through the online programs that see each
That,
other and connect in groups, and now they're going to see each other in person. And so,
yeah,
like, they've already developed this relationship that's now is going to be like,
that's
supersized.
going to be cool to see. Yeah.
Right. And we see that all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. That would be really cool to see. And so these retreats, they're multiple times a year, correct? Throughout the
Yep.
country.
Multiple times a year throughout the country. We take a little bit of a break during the summer months just because
Hmm.
of holiday travel and everything
Sure.
else. But we do the expeditions. And then we do them, in Joshua Tree outside of Los
Nice.
Angeles. We do them in Hill Country outside of Austin, Texas, and then in upstate New York at Racebrook Lodge. So kind of wherever
Even
you
the
want to.
fact just to go there for a weekend and hang out and be around other men. Wow, that's appealing in and of itself, right?
It's I'm totally biased, obviously, but it's life changing, and it's
Yeah.
one of those things where, look, like the thing about Everyman and the core ethos. Like I grew up in Kansas,
Uh,
and when I was 37 years old in New York City and knew that I had to change something about my being to get more out of my life, I started looking around and I found a bunch of different things, quite honestly. And there are a lot of things out there. But the question that I said to myself, I was like, where are just the everyday dudes, just like me, that are, it's like, I'm not trying to be overly spiritual or super
right.
woo woo or beating drums. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I mean, I like
Right.
to do that shit, but I'm just like, hey, we're the everyday dudes, just
Yeah.
like me.
Yeah.
And we didn't find it, but so we were like, hell, like, let's just call it Everyman because it is for every man. It's not the woo woo and all the stuff that's fine. And, if guys want that's out there for them. But we kind of fundamentally don't believe that you actually need, it's kind of distraction,
Yeah. Agree.
it's kind of just noise, right?
Agree. Agree. And to go back to, you've got the virtual, and that is, I mean, you've got that as well. If you can't attend,
Yeah.
if I couldn't attend a retreat, I can jump on and start making these gains, you know, through,
Like immediately. I mean,
yeah,
the level of impact that's able to be created is monumental
I love that.
in a very short period of time.
I love that. I love what you guys are doing. I really do. And I appreciate what you're doing as well. How can people find you guys?
Evryman.com, Evryman.com.
Okay.
So one E. Like I said, anybody can become a member anytime.
Yeah.
You can join our fundamentals program. That happens the first Tuesday of every month. And then our retreats. We've
Mm.
got one next weekend. I don't know when this is coming out, but we've got a few spots available. But I think the other thing I would say is that it's natural for guys to be kind of healthy skeptics. Like, look, I'm a healthy skeptic, you know, and that's okay. We should listen to that, and we should listen to being like, okay, what are all the reasons why I'm trying to convince myself that this is bullshit and I don't need to do that? Because most likely you're running that same conversation in other areas of your life. And that's the loop.
That's it. That's it.
You
You hit
know,
it.
if I do this differently, she won't get as upset. Or if I, you know, just, do a little bit more work, then it's like we're always, that's human nature. We're always going to do that to ourselves
Yeah.
until we say, okay, hold on a second. I got to do something different here. And it should be scary. You should be reluctant. Like when you get under a bench press and you got, 4 plates on there, and you should be like, shit, I don't know if I can lift this
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but the fact that you're able to get under there and do it is what it enables growth. I mean, I'm a biology nerd. Here's the thing. Our biology, our brain rewards us with dopamine when we do hard things.
Hmm.
When we do things that scare us or do things that require struggle and we go through that, our brain rewards us with dopamine because it's actually training us to survive, which is what we are put on this earth to do. We are hardwired to survive. We have to do hard things. So if we don't do hard things, we never get the dopamine that trains us to do those hard things.
That makes complete sense. And I did not realize that. That makes complete sense. And then on the flip side, we were talking about this earlier. On the flip side with the nervous system, do you mind kind of going into that?
Well, yeah, and I think, we were touching on this earlier, and we just do not we this meat suit that we're in, right? We dramatically underappreciate all the working parts of it. It's like our autonomic nervous system. Like, holy shit. Just think about that for a second. Like, there's this part of us, like I wake up in the morning and I'm not telling myself to breathe, right? I'm not telling my heart to beat. It's a freaking miracle. Our nervous system goes through this process of fight, flight, or freeze, right? And our nervous system is what keeps us safe, right? And when chaos is around us, we go into survival, right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes survival is a healthy place for men to be, because survival is when we are needed biologically, right?
Yeah.
Survive, protect, provide, right? But it's also a very chaotic place, right? And so our ability to actually down-regulate our nervous system out of that fight or flight and be sort of cool under pressure is what we have to train ourselves to do, right? And so understanding, okay, yeah, this conversation that I'm having is going to be triggering as all hell, or, yeah, taxes and tariffs is spinning my world out. Like, just knowing that is going to, activate your nervous system and put you into a fight, flight, or freeze response is a very important sort of awareness to have, because no good decisions are made from that place.
Right. No, that's true. And so basically you guys help them realize that, discover that, get in touch with that, and then the tools of how to deal with that going forward.
How to deal with it, how to manage it, right? And there's a saying that I use is like,
and even take advantage of it, right?
Take advantage of it, because here's the beautiful thing about fight, flight, or freeze is often stimulated by fear, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But fear actually makes us better, right?
Yeah.
Because if we are fearful of things, then we are going to consciously and subconsciously mitigate risk, which actually makes us sharper and more focused, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, but if we have this relationship with fear as if fear, because guys say, oh, I'm fear, and then they say, oh, I'm stressed, and then stress turns into, anger, and then anger turns into, depression. It's like, well, you just need to develop your relationship with fear and understand that, like, you're afraid.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a normal response.
Yeah. Yeah, of course you are.
How do I create a relationship with that and actually take that information, that data that my body is giving me, and use that
as an asset. Yeah.
Use that an asset to be more focused, to be more, calculated. But we often do is we shy away from that fear. Like, we don't want to go near it. We don't want to touch it. It's like, if you can't touch it, you're not going to get the benefit of it.
No, that's great. That makes so much sense. Hey, so before we go, tell everybody where you are with your gorgeous background and give us a little peek.
I'm in Lisbon, Portugal right now. Great.
Man, I appreciate it. I know we've kind of struggled with the time there and getting together, and I just appreciate you doing it. And
I appreciate the opportunity to be on here, and just, it's 8-9 years ago when we started this journey. There weren't a lot of guys out there like you, and I really respect who you are and just the willingness to have this conversation. And the last thing I'll say is that as guys, we do this thing, and it's only amplified through social media and everything else, is we sort of put ourselves on other people's timelines, right?
Yeah.
On other people's journeys, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, why? You know what I mean? Like, I'm 46 years old, and you know what? I've never been 46 years old on April 18th in the year 2025.
Yeah.
So why would I expect to be anywhere other than exactly where I am with
Yeah.
all that I've learned and known? I'm
It's
not
true.
you.
No, that is so true, and it's that I think that's so common. It's something I've dealt with. What, they're my age and look what they've accomplished, or they're younger than me and look what they've accomplished. It's I think that's something that we struggle with, that men struggle with, and it's in our face all the time with social media and everything else too, right?
Right.
And we don't give ourselves credit.
We
don't give ourselves credit. Like, you didn't have the tools. You didn't have the background. You didn't have this. You didn't have that. Not to make excuses, but look where you came from and what you've had. Did you use those? Did you use those fully? That's more of what's helped me.
Right. It's just looking at it saying, well, okay, great. That's where you are. And, oftentimes as guys, because we're competitive, we look at that with disdain.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it's like, hold on a second. What if I actually looked at that with appreciation and acknowledgement and empathy? Because that's the energy that's going to bring that back to you in your own life. And so it's like, I see dudes starting Evryman that are 75 years old. It's like, man, I see guys that are 24 and 38 and 57. It's like, whatever, dude. Like,
yeah, I mean, did you take some wrong paths along the way? Yeah.
But
what did you learn from those?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
And every man doesn't fix it all, but it gives you the ability to actually learn. And because if your head is in the sand, you're going to be in the loop, and you're not going to get the data that the loop is giving you.
Yeah. Yeah. Lucas, I love it. I absolutely love it. And, man, I appreciate what you guys are doing. I know this is kind of a dad podcast, and I mean, my goodness, we discuss all sorts of things. But when I saw it, when I noticed you guys discovered you guys, it's like, that's something that I struggle with. It's something I know men struggle with. I hear about constantly. I've just got to get these guys on, and I so much appreciate you taking time out of your day and coming on here talking about it and what you guys are doing.
Anytime, and I appreciate you for having me on, and we'll do it again. We'll get you to a retreat.
All right, so it's everyman.com. It's EVRYMAN.com.
Yep.
And I also know that you guys are on Instagram. I will tag you guys. I'll also, when I release this, I'll put links, of course, to your webpage as well as to Instagram as well. So if anybody's looking, they can easily find you guys.
We'll do it.
So
we'll do
Lucas, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. Okay. Thank you. Hey, and thank you guys for listening to the Dad to Dads podcast. You can find us on Apple or Spotify. You can also pretty much any format, any platform that you listen to podcasts, you can find us on. You can also find us on Instagram and YouTube. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button so you don't miss any episodes. And look, feel free to leave comments. I love reading those. I read every one of them, and I love the feedback. I also love the ideas for future subjects as well. So keep doing that. And I look forward to talking to you all next time.